Welcome to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspective Podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. And today we have on a super interesting guest. We have on Vladimir Sitnikov. Now, Vladimir, your background is in marketing. You're a chief marketing officer right now at Constructor Tech. And I'm going to let you talk a little bit about that. But that wasn't what you studied in school. And I think it gives you maybe a different perspective on how you do your job today. And I'm going to let you talk about your background there. But also, you're an entrepreneur. On the side, you're also starting up a whole new company. And when you take on the role of a startup and the owner of the business or partner in the business, it helps us think differently as well. I'm a serial entrepreneur myself. So I would love to, before we get started, and today we're talking about, for CMOs, the deal breaker, right? For creating long-term sustainable growth. Like what gets in our way, right? What becomes the biggest challenge that we can't overcome? We're going to talk about all that today. But before we start, I wanted to turn it over to you that you could maybe expand a little bit more in your background before we dig in.
Nice to see you, Steve. So as you mentioned, originally I was not a marketer by education. I actually studied radio engineering, and my plan in school was to build some high-tech devices specifically for airplanes, etc. But then, by chance, actually, I switched to marketing, and I can say that my background helped me a lot. This structured approach of engineering thinking and marketing now is more engineering than ever, I can say. So it helped me a lot during my journey. So I switched more and more in marketing, and at some point became a CMO in one company, and then it goes one by one. And now, as you mentioned, in parallel, I'm starting my own company, Agent, which is personalized health supplements. It includes hardware. It's really heavy on marketing because the market is also marketing heavy. And in general, it's my passion, like medicine, health, well-being. It's what's helped me to stay energetic, motivated at my main work as a CMO in big companies, because you never have enough time. And being healthy is really critical. If you don't have this, you cannot be good in your job. You will burn out very fast, and you will not be as high performing as you can be.
Excellent. So here's what I'd love to do. I'd love to take all that background and start out some of these challenges, right, that we talked about before for creating long-term sustainable success. When you and I talked in our original conversation, we centered around trust as one of the major issues. And in fact, if you were to go into like any of the AI tools from ChatGPT to Perplexity, Cloud AI, anything like that, DeepSeek, and put in what are the biggest challenge facing B2B companies today, trust comes up at the top of that list. And the McKinseys, the Deloittes, the Forresters of the world. In fact, Forrester said it's the number one challenge for B2B businesses is addressing trust. They even said, look, we've got demand gen, big plans. Like we have areas that we focus on, sales enablement plans. Like we very rarely have a plan to address trust, right? So what I just wanted to ask, just to kind of start out here, is kind of navigating trust. How do you think about that? And you've got some specifics in your business that you're working with that even make trust, I think, even a greater hurdle to get over in some respects. But I'd love to just turn it over to you and just talk about trust.
Yes. So my opinion, trust is really critical. It's a deal breaker, not only in B2B, but in some specific markets, you cannot go anywhere without trust. And I was happy and I was lucky enough during my career to work in some companies in B2B and some markets, specifically on the markets when trust is critical. I started in JetBrains, in IT, developers, everything built on trust, built on recommendations. They don't trust advertising. They need this personal connection, word of mouth. Now it's in education. Similar story. It's extremely critical because teachers, professors, they always rely on opinion of other people and on trust sources. You cannot just show the ads and they will buy. It's not working like this for them. And my kind of outside view on this is any complicated industry, any complicated market works like this. Because people don't have enough time, enough attention to go deep, understand all the details. So they need to trust someone, somebody, some company, some sources, and they need these signs of trust to start trusting whoever or whatever trying to inform them about something, either about tools or about products or about whatever they need, even about approach to do that.
So I'd love to know what are some of the things that you do and that you could talk about here about how to develop that trust, right? Yeah, we all know what trust is. We all know that it's important, and you really clearly articulated that. But if we need to have a plan to build trust, right? We have our buyers these days that are waiting longer and longer and longer to want to even talk to us, right? It's this delayed buyer journey because they don't trust us. In fact, I think it was in the last Edelman LinkedIn Trust Barometer. They said that 60% of B2B buyers, they think we're being intentionally misleading. It's not only just a lack of understanding and trust, they're biased, right? That we're sales organizations and we're going to put things into the best possible light that we can, right? So, how do we start to try to build this trust?
Actually, you notice very well. People are bombarded with different messages, with different sales pitches from sales. And actually, I believe this is the reason why trust became even more important because a lot of these pitches and messages are not relevant and are not trusted simply because of amount of them. And in terms of building trust, how I see the two sources of trust. One is an internal, which coming from a product and which drives this movement for B2B from sales-driven to self-service model. When you can actually go, try, based on someone recommendation or just find online, actually try and build this trust yourself because you actually can touch the product. Even if you don't understand everything, it still builds on trust. And second kind of trust is kind of external trust. It's different kind of awards, different kind of thought leaders' opinions. Historically, it was Gartner, Forrester research. So these opinion leaders. Now it's mostly individual influencers. So this external motivation, external proof that something is working, something is recommended, etc. It may be actually not human. You mentioned ChatGPT, and for many buyers I know nowadays, they're not asking salespeople. They better go to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT or another AI system to prepare some analysis and to understand, like, does it make sense to try something new, to try the software, to speak with this company, to read materials from this company, etc. And from marketing, maybe last thing, it's kind of in between of external and internal. And that's why I believe events becoming even more critical. This one-on-one connection is actually a great way to build trust, either online or offline. Offline, of course, works better because you can feel the person, you see it, you see that it's real. And in the future, it will be more important because everyone knows there are a lot of AI avatars, AI videos. So trust in online videos are going to be down very quickly. We will be overflowed with all these fake people doing very fake advertising, fake reviews. And so in-person communications became more critical and became one of the greatest tools to build trust. Of course, it can be direct one from salespeople, or it can be by third party. So by another customers, by your colleagues, etc. So kind of reputation based, even by influencers who are you.
So, you just really hit something so important, right? The idea of this one on one connection, a personal relationship. And we know our business is all, it's relationship based business, right? And that trust is the foundation for all relationships. So, we're on the right direction here. And you just said something really important is that one-to-one connection is important, but also it doesn't have to be just the sales team, right? Creating a connection, starting the conversation. It's harder and harder today for sales teams to get that conversation started earlier in the buyer's journey. So we have to look for ways that we are creative, that we can engage our buyers. We can engage them earlier and earlier in the buyer's process. Because unless we're a household name, right? If we're a challenger brand, if we're somebody that, they may not even know about, right? By the time they get to the point where they want to talk to companies, they have a bias towards companies that they're familiar with, companies that they know of, right? And risk plays a huge, huge portion of making a buyer's decision because they don't want to, it's kind of like that, that saying, you never go wrong buying from IBM, right? Because it's a known, trusted situation where they are putting themselves and their career at risk when they make big business decisions, right? We got to remember that. So, how do we get more involved with them? How do we create these one on one connections, have these conversations when they're kind of telling our sales organization, I want to wait? And, I don't want to talk to you.
Yes, actually, you mentioned this interesting topic of sales organization. I've noticed recently one nice trend. So in the last 10, 15, 20 years, people in sales organization changing the titles. It was account executive, it was sales executive, now it's growth managers, simply because it's very easy to ruin reputation of the name. And now if you get email from someone with a title account executive, you just ignore it most of the time. So this rebranding of people is quite important. But in general, I think the key is not focusing on one channel. It's not only about sales or about marketing campaign. It's about general feeling and general, even emotions. Like we're talking about B2B, but even in B2B, emotions play important role. And that's feelings that you're welcome, like in support, on the website, etc. And not pushed by anyone to do something. But basically, you are investigating and you finding the way to solve your problem yourself, and entire organization, entire B2B company is here to support and bring some value to you. Even if at the end you're not buying your this product, which this company doing, I think it's quite good. And that's actually a good example how you can build trust in the process. I saw such example in my career before when it's better to say to specific potential customer, no, we are not the best solution for you in this case. So because it will be valuable and it will be much more valuable than he get it, he's not happy, etc. But if we are straightforward, we add this value, and even if he not buy this time, but people switch companies very often now. In next company, if he has the same problem and we are better fit, we will be the first to whom he come with his business and with his project. And it's not only marketing, it's sales, marketing, support, even product. So it's entire journey and entire communication environment which is created by the company.
And I love how you said, we may not be the right fit for you, right? That's transparency, right? Now I know when I'm talking to somebody that has my best interest in mind, right? Versus their best interest in mind. But one of the things when we went back to that 60% think that we're actually being misleading, one of the first things that we can do is work on transparency, right? And work on how do we just provide value. If we think about providing value first, selling second, right? That gets us, 3 steps down the road here. And you had mentioned there's a ton of obviously different ways that you can deliver value. You had talked about the world of digital transformation, and that we have more data, we have more things that we can do to analyze, to create value, right? And by creating value in non-traditional ways, it gives us things to talk about to our prospects, right? And that's what they want. They want to be educated, right? We should think of ourselves as educators. In this world of digital transformation, is it easier to do that than ever these days? Are we taking advantage of that as an opportunity like we should?
I think we are trying. There are multiple ways to do it. But first, in general, people are quite conservative, and it's not an easy way to switch from what you did before for a long time to this new approach, because in reality, it's a paradigm shift. It was never like this before in the history, and Now you need to change your behavior because customers changing behavior. So you need to adapt, and this adaptation must be much faster than before because also customers' interest and behavior changing much faster. So it's tricky, but it needs to be done. There is no other way around because markets move faster. Other companies' competition is much more fierce these days. You can build also using AI, like entire new software company, especially if it's software business. There is not enough to defend your market share because like 20 people can build very similar company based on new technology extremely fast. And without these legacy processes, a legacy mindset, they will just take this legacy business customers. Being transparent, being like having the best value of customer in mind. I actually always remember this Slack story. It's not fully about marketing and sales. It's more about pricing. And by the way, myself, I was completely, it was impossible level of transparency at the time because you pay subscription and they reimburse you at the end of the period for all subscriptions you did not use. It's not a huge deal. Like same story. They probably lose some money because of this and some revenue, but the amount of trust they built is this simple action is incredible. But I personally struggle. I recommend such things in many companies. It's not easy to advocate for this in classic B2B companies, especially in legacy companies, because it's kind of very risky approach to be transparent.
Yeah, it's interesting because you bring up legacy systems. Legacy systems, typically what that means is legacy systems are siloed, they're fractionalized, right? The data that comes out of them isn't coordinated the way that we need it. And, as C-suite executives in our businesses today, we have to be more on top of like, how are we handling and managing data in ways that we never have before? Not only do we have more data than we've ever had before, right? But we haven't really solved the data that comes from legacy systems that is fractionalized, right? Like the best AI tools, right? We talked about, the potential of AI and helping us create value. They're as good as the data set that they sit on, right? And so data is actually one of the top things that is one of the biggest challenges that businesses have today is how do we organize? How do we control our data? Because we're not going to provide value. We're not going to get into those one-on-one conversations that you're talking about today if we're not really looking at the data that we have and bringing that together. So I don't know. It's, like unlocking silo data is a big topic. Have you guys talked about that internally?
Yeah, so it's actually a huge topic on any level of company development. Same in startup, but same in huge corporations. And in probably 15 years, we switch from one situation when we lack data, and basically we can only track online channels and some selected activities, which can be tracked to a relevant amount of data. So now we track more data than we can actually use, and we can structure, and we can clean. And so from getting insights from very small amount of data, we are trying now to find which data can be actually useful from all this crazy amount of data and which we should ignore. And more importantly, actually, it's related to previous conversation about customers. It's the same on their side when they making buyer decision. And our job as a marketers and as a businessmen in general, we need to get all this data which we're collecting, which our customers collecting, analyze it, make it useful, valuable, and then give it back to customers in some easy to understand, easy to consume way, so they are not lost in this data as well. So it's kind of additional. Now we have a lot of customers of our data. So previously it was used maybe by marketing and some people in the sales leadership. Now this data is used by everyone. It's used by product development, support, sales, even individual business development people. They have access to this data, but they are lost in it. So our job as a kind of, sometimes I like to call marketing people kind of navigators in this world of data. for other team members in organization. So we need to show them or provide this data in some usable format so they can do some actions based on it, or just clean this data so they can rely on the data in their decisions, in their analytics, whoever it is.
So what you're talking about is really a whole new competency that we haven't really had as B2B companies, right? Taking the world of data, you said, we've got so much data, we don't know what to do with it. We don't know which is important data, which isn't. How do we separate it out? How do we analyze it? Then how do we turn it into value that then is communicated within these one-on-one conversations? If I could kind of just tell the whole story that I think you're telling us here, right? That's difficult. Like in the C-suite, in the organization itself, you're really talking about a whole new competency that we haven't had before, right? Data analytics really isn't something that, the C-suite was really talked a lot about, right? But it seems to be your recommendation is that this is something that we really have to develop as a competency internally. Am I reading that correctly?
Exactly. And more important, also kind of story or anecdote. I'm advising one company for a few years already, and another one from time to time, who are doing data analytics. And there is a huge shift in data because historically in organizations, this data, in general, data story was split by different departments. So someone in engineering collects this data, building some data warehouses, databases, like kind of engineering thing. Then someone in the middle, in whatever department, builds some reports based on this data. And then someone in marketing and sales analyze this data and decide, including top leadership, and mostly like very limited amount of people in reality, decided what to do with this data, which targets we need to achieve, what we need to do, what are the next steps. And this entire process was not aligned. So it was different people with different KPIs. Engineering cares about amount of data, accessibility, then reporters care about quality of data, how they can build reports, etc. And at the end, it may be not needed data, which provided to C-suite. So it's hard to make decision, and especially hard to make correct decision. And now it's finally starting to be aligned, and these three positions, they are becoming very close together, especially with AI, with modern tools. And more important, more important is to actually analyze this data. And that's why some of the chief and leadership people actually not just ask for the reports, but actually like to analyze the data themselves or really understand how these reports are built. And the second important outcome of this trend is that speed in which data moves from collecting to information or dashboards to action becoming much faster. Previously, it can be like 6 months, 1 year. I remember we get reports like only a quarter after it actually happened. If it was not marketing data, but let's say some finance data or sales data. And now it's in time frame of around weeks, maybe days in some cases. It's an important shift, and it requires new capabilities and new expertise in teams. It requires new approach, new capabilities basically in everyone in the company, almost everyone. So you're able to analyze data properly and extend this data.
And it's interesting when we say analyze the data properly, right? We kind of have this assumption that AI knows how to do that, right? That we can just kind of say, here, I'm going to upload some documents and I'm going to ask you to analyze this. And, some of the top 5 business reasons why businesses don't use AI correctly is they don't have the right data and they don't know how to use the AI tools. So a prompt is very important, and data analysis and matching is something that is a very highly specialized expertise. And so it's one of those things that we still have to, and we're not going to solve it on the podcast here today, but using AI tools correctly, giving it the right context, giving it even the right, information on what the industry is, the audience that you're looking for, specific goals for that analysis, right? these are all things that are really important as kind of a backdrop on this. But you brought up the fact that it's now the teams internally that are going to be utilizing this data and creating this analysis. And, you know, we had talked earlier about creating high performance culture to promote teams and, working together and get the best outcomes from our teams. Part of that culture is teaching, right? Is educating. Like, how are we going to be utilizing these kinds of tools, and how are we creating all new competitive advantage for us as a company, and how you're going to help deliver it, right? In your mind, you're consulting with companies, you're working with a company, you're starting a new company. How important is company culture in whatever we're talking about in terms of driving growth in the business? I just wanted to kind of make a left turn here for a little bit and talk about that company culture and the importance of that culture.
Yeah, I believe it's absolutely critical simply because of expertise. So it's became critical to find these people who have this key, like quite narrow expertise in analyzing data and using some advanced technologies. And these people by itself require specific culture. You cannot just find some great person, teach him, and expect him to stay in the company when culture does not encourage this kind of behavior, and also not encourage continuous learning, continuous education, and continuous upskill, because things change quite fast. And talking about AI, data, etc., it's most critical thing is to know limitations, and these limitations, they change it very fast. You can safeguard yourself from mistakes if you don't know, like you can use this tool here, or you can use, let's say, this kind of analysis only to analyze sales performance in this area or marketing performance in this area, but not everywhere. And this changing all the time, like every month, not every day, but every month, every quarter, every year. And this continuous throwing inside the company is really critical to catch up with these changes. And this needs to be encouraged. It needs to be supported by other people in the team. So someone comes and tells, like, he did something great using AI or not using AI, he should be supported by other people. And he should be celebrated. And also what he proposed or what he done should be used. Because it's also a big problem, is kind of culture and also alignment problem, is some great things was done or done continuously, but they did not get enough appreciation and not enough value is extracted from them. Sometimes just because it's late. So we waited like 1 year after it was introduced and already actual. So the speed in which organization moves is also part of the culture. How decisions are made, how fast they are made, what information is required. Do we use some data to support this information, or it's just personal decision of one person or one department? Because everyone has KPIs, and it's another important topic. They should be aligned with this culture. Because if people evaluated by specific KPI, of course, everyone will work in a way to maximize his own value. And the way how we measure specific team member or specific team, they will do their best to maximize this KPI and not general outcome of the company. And the cleverer the people and more educated, the easier it will be for them to maximize this KPI by itself without maximizing general outcome of the company.
I think we can have a whole podcast series just on alignment and culture, right? We've talked about so much here, and I want to go back and ask you a question. Our original title is The Deal Breaker for Creating Long-Term Sustainable Success. If there was one takeaway that you wanted the audience to have from this conversation, what would that be?
So actually, the last topic, I believe, is the most important one. It's important to create the culture which will change. It's like we are not living in a world when one strategy continue to work for a long time now. It's like it's ended already. current strategy, and that's actually historical kind of definition of strategy, is being able to adjust your behavior based on new inputs and not just have a straightforward set of tactics or straightforward plus the average change it going forward.
Well, I wish we had a lot more time, but here's one thing that I know. People are going to have questions. Would it be appropriate if I gave a link to your LinkedIn profile out so that people could reach out and ask questions?
Yeah, sure. I'm always open to discuss with fellow marketers, and I usually reply to messages in my social media. So feel free to share my LinkedIn.
Well, fantastic. So many important topics all in one half an hour. I just wanted to say that I really appreciated it because the goal of this podcast is to bring different perspectives and different insights from C-suite executives from all over the world with different varying backgrounds and ways of looking at solving the same problems. So I just want to say thank you for coming on and being a part of that. And I call it the rising tide that lifts all boats, right? If we can all share, then we all benefit. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you also, Steve. Actually, it was quite interesting discussion, and because important thoughts came during the discussion only. It's very hard to come up with something, and during a discussion, I believe we covered a lot of important topics, which will help. At least it will help me better understand what's thinking about specific topic.